Well, hello there, everyone. Um, so let me see how, here we go. I'm re-recording this class because we lost connection right as we were about 10 minutes in. Um, so I'm having to re-record this separately. So I hope this works. All right. Again, preemptive apology for Julia. She is currently singing opera. My parrot in the background. So just to um, preemptively apologize for that. Let me just adjust my laptop ever so there, gently here. All right, great. So, um, today's topic is caring for your plants through the winter months. So, especially here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're currently entering wintertime. This can be very taxing on our plants. It's a whole a whole multitude of changes. Number one, light, which we are about to discuss. Light is going to be much less available for your plants. We're getting much less daylight, the temperature fluctuations, and the drops in humidity. So quite a few things for them to contend with. So here's just a couple things that you can do in order to help your plants through this season. So one of the key things is, yes, you do tend to be able to kind of relax in terms of watering your plants. You're not going to be doing it as often. Many plants tend to go dormant during the colder seasons, so they're not actively growing. So therefore, they kind of go through a resting period. Now, it's very easy to completely out of sight, out of mind, where before you were much more on top of it. You maybe had a note and that would remind you, right, that you had to take care of your plants. Or maybe you did it every Saturday. And so every Saturday is when you would water your plants. But for many of these plants, you're going to be watering them much less, not only in terms of frequency, but also in terms of quantity. So a lot, sorry, Julia's singing. So a lot of plants are going to be requiring less fuss. So therefore, they are easy to just forget about. But you don't want to do that. You can easily accidentally kill a plant. Many people start to panic when they see their plants dropping leaves. Certain species like frizzle sizzles, they will literally lose all their leaves and go back to just being a bulb. And so many people will panic and think, oh no, I killed my plant. But what you have to do is continue caring for it. It's the same thing with oxalis, if you're familiar with those, the shamrocks. So gorgeous, all different colors, really beautiful, and people panic. It gets cold, all of a sudden there are no more flowers, there's no more leaves. Um, they go back into these little rhizomes, and you can't count them out. They're still alive. They just simply went into dormancy. And what you have to do is just continue caring for them, just less water, and they're gonna come right back around come springtime. Another species that this happens with is alocasia and colocaceas. So fret not. Um, this happens very often, and a lot of people will reach out asking me what happened. I killed my elephant ear, but in reality, it's just going dormant, and it will come back. So all is not lost. Now, it's very important to check your local frost tables. This is a frost table, so that date of frost essentially is it's a date in which there is 50% chance of there being frost. So it's once it hits that 50% threshold that there is a potential frost coming to your zone, coming to your area. Now, what you should do, things fluctuate, right? So it's much easier to simply adjust that and preemptively move your plants away uh, from your windowsills, which we're about to discuss in a moment, at least 2 weeks before that frost date, because sometimes it comes a little sooner. So just, you don't want to be caught unaware, especially if you have your plants outside. Now, in terms of the springtime as well, so sometimes they will give you a date and it'll say that the last time that we'll have frost is by said date. Also, add 2 weeks to that just in case. So wait 2 more weeks after that designated frost date, because sometimes it might be slightly delayed, and so you don't want to preemptively start putting plants out and then get caught by a late frost. So it's becoming much more often in the last few years. Many people have lost crops. Many businesses have been affected by this. So try to allocate an extra 2 weeks at least to that date, just to be sure. Now, as I mentioned, you're going to want to move your plants inside. So that threshold temperature is about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So as soon as it starts to dip right below that, you're going to want to move your plants inside. So it can go down very quickly. So the faster you move them in, the better. Many plants tend to start to go into shock after it's dropped that much, especially if it happens quickly. So this shock is shown in terms of they might get droopy. The edges of the leaves might get frost burn, in which they have they look crispy and black, or they just get darkened. Also with succulents, so succulents are predominantly water based. They are, that's what they're how they store water is in their leaves. And so what ends up happening is if you wait too long and it's in contact with too much cold, what ends up happening is the water inside of its leaves actually freeze, causing the cells to actually burst and then causing cell death, which then can cause big chunks of your plant to just die off. So that's very unfortunate. So this is also why you want to move them away from glass and the windowsills. So if they're in contact with that glass and that glass is getting frozen, what ends up happening is since it's such close contact, that part will become damaged. So whatever plant part, leaf, stem, aerial roots, anything like that that is actually in contact with the glass is at risk for getting burned. This is the same for windowsill. So sometimes, especially if you have a drafty windowsill, what you can do, as I put down, as I mentioned here in the slide, is weather tape, a very inexpensive way of remedying that. So if you do happen to have a bit of a draft coming through your windows and you want to mitigate that, you can easily purchase very inexpensive weather tape and line it up along the edges. Oh, sorry, I'm still recovering from a sinus infection, so my voice keeps cutting in and out. All right. So what can the cold? So what metabolic changes does the cold stimulate in our plant? It actually causes a whole multitude of changes. So we mentioned that your plant can go into dormancy. Now, not all plants go into dormancy. This is usually plants that live in those temperate environments in which they experience a winter, or something similar to a winter, where there might be less water, there's drop in temperatures in the desert. Um, so this is very common. But many tropical species, so many philodendrons, they go into somewhat of a dormancy. They just stop consistently growing, but they don't actually die back. This is because they don't have a winter. So they are responding to the drop in temperature and the less availability to light, right? But they don't technically actually go into full-on dormancy as others do, that actually experience winters um, in the wild, right? That have that pre-programmed into their genetic code, that actually die back. So they will start to lose their leaves, and some will die back into bulbs. Some species just die back to roots, and then these species are referred to as perennials. But there are also some biennial species in which that takes 2 years to actually fulfill its life cycle. So, what can, in terms of shock, right? So, as I brought up, sometimes just the shock, just that cold drop, can cause spontaneous cell death. It can burn your leaves, your foliage. It can kill big sections of your plant, if not the entire plant. And this can happen with heat too. So there is like this can happen in the opposite side of the spectrum too. So you do have to worry too at the peak of summer when it gets incredibly hot. So either extreme is not good for your plant, and so it can cause leaf drop. So will all of a sudden your plant just drops its leaves, and so this is usually, it's just in response. It's stressed out. It just ends up dropping its leaves. So again, don't necessarily panic. Sometimes they do come back from this. Leaf drop is very common in acclimation. So you bring home a plant from the plant shop. You get home, and then all of a sudden, a couple days later, it starts dropping leaves. It's starting to try to adjust to its new environment. It's very common. So again, don't panic. Try to continue taking care of the plant. In some cases, plants that have more woody stems, what you can do is with your nail, try not to make a very big wound. But if you really wanted to see if the plant was still alive, you can just kind of, with just a little piece, kind of with like a razor blade, kind of strip away the outer protective layer. And if you still see it's green, then it's still alive. But if you go in and it's like beige and dry, and it's dry to the touch, and there's no green, there's no living tissue, then unfortunately the plant is gone. And of course, if it just starts to fall apart and decay, then there's unfortunately no going back there. So in terms of light, so during the winter, what's happening is we're getting the sun is in a different position, right? We're not getting as many hours of daylight as we would during the growing season. So it's not as stronger. It's farther away from us, right? The sun is farther away from us, and the amount of sunlight that we get decreases rapidly. So what ends up happening is, so the plants start to pick up on this. So for some species, this signals a time for them to flower. So a lot of cacti actually flower during this time, and as soon as the nights become longer, this actually stimulates them to start producing flowers. And in some species, so with they will actually come out of dormancy. So I'm trying to think of this. Oh, Granovia. There we go. Granovia, and called mountain rose is the common name. So that is a species, for instance. It's native to the Canary Islands. and it actually comes out of dormancy. So it looks like a rose, hence the name, but it's closed during the spring and summer. Um, and as soon as it hits like late September into mid October and it starts getting cold, it actually starts to open up and it looks like it blooms. It's so incredibly gorgeous. There's so many different colors and varieties you can get. But that's for it. That signals its growing season. So that is actually when it kicks off, um, and it wakes up from its slumber. So this can signal different things for your plants. But in terms of trying to acclimate your plants, right? So you've got a bunch of tropical species, for instance, and you don't want to lose them. Your collection has grown exponentially during the summer months. What do you do? So consider number one, moving them to better light conditions. So depending on what kind of lighting you have available in your home, sorry, my cat just jumped up next to me. Um, you have in your home, northern light is the weakest type of light, northern exposures. So if you are able to move your plants to eastern, western, southern windows, southern being the best, if it's possible. Now, again, don't put them right up against the window, but just right off of the window. Now, if you seal your window, it will probably be much safer for you to put your plants there. But so increasing what availability to light that they can get so that they can make the most of what they're getting is if you move it to a better exposure. Now, what will benefit that? Cleaning your windows. So take advantage of the changing of the season and give your windows a really good clean your screens just so that it can maximize the amount of light able to come through. Also, maintain clean leaves. So don't forget, just because it's winter, that you stop cleaning your leaves. Now, I have had a class in which I talk about maintaining clean leaves, and specifically I prefer to do it every time I'm going to water the plant. I take advantage, I have it in front of me and just clean the leaves. So if you can't do it weekly or every 10 days, at least once a month, make a note to yourself to clean the leaves of your plants at least once a month. This is going to help them optimize their ability to photosynthesize. So this is what you want to do. Now, offering supplemental lighting. So if you have some plants, for instance, that don't go into a dormancy period or are really starting to suffer because of the change, and this is common, so don't worry, your best bet is to supplement lighting. I recommend like full spectrum LED fluorescent light. I also do have we have had a class previously talking about all of the different types of light. But this is specifically something that will definitely make all the difference. Now, for instance, I set these guys up with these LED lights and their gooseneck, so they readily move around. They need to be within a foot of the plant itself. Now, this is opposite of a western window. However, now that it's winter, the light just doesn't hit this wall anymore. It barely makes it to midway. So therefore, if I want to keep my plants healthy that I keep right over here, I need to give them supplemental light. Now, this does tend to trick plants, especially if you give them at least 8 hours of light a day. They prefer about 12, but at least 8 hours a day. This will trick them into thinking it's still the growing season, or will bring on another growing season. So it's very common that they'll start putting out new leaves. If your home is warm and it's being kept in the upper 60s, low 70s, the humidity is staying pretty constant in the high 30s, to 40, where it's comfortable, then you can continue caring for your plant essentially how you were caring for it during the summer months, because you've created a microclimate. And now microclimates can be different in different parts of your dwelling. So do keep in mind, use little gauges that tell you your temperature and humidity. They're very inexpensive. I bought these. It was a 4-pack for $7. I do have a more fancy schmancy one in the bedroom. And that one tells you temperature and humidity. And this one's pretty accurate. So right now it's 75.9 degrees in here and at 40% humidity. So they're very happy right now. so, um, so I have these in different rooms. One in my bathroom, the kitchen, the living room, in both the office and the bedroom, and even in different parts. Because again, there will be different microclimates. Maybe one part has there's a draft coming in. In other parts, there might not be as much air circulation, so therefore the temperature might stay a little bit more stable. So this changes. So I'm just saying that I recommend getting these. It definitely changes the game for you and really helps you figure out what's happening in your home and how to mitigate potential issues that come up when you're trying to help your plants make it through this. So moisture requirements. So what's going on with water, right? So I did mention you're going to water less. Now I put an asterisk here because this can change depending on your household. Again, if you're adding supplemental lighting, you're having regular temperatures, and it basically feels like summer in your home already, you might not have to change at all. You're going to notice your plants are drying out exactly the same as you did in the summer. So you just keep taking care of them as you would. This isn't the case for everyone. So some houses just get incredibly cold during the winter. So you can't really get away with that. Also, depends, do you have heating vents, right? For some, you're able to control it. You can make it less or more hot, but in some cases, especially if you're like in a building, we can't control it. So if they decide to blast it, that's just what we have to deal with. And so if you have any plants that are within proximity of those heaters, they dry out incredibly fast. So therefore, you might end up actually watering them more often than you did during the summer months. It's also incredibly dry. So the heat doesn't help this situation. And because we tend to close our windows during this time of season. So again, less air circulation. So what ends up happening is the air is incredibly dry. Now, you need to increase your humidity levels. So again, keep them in the high 30s at least. And there are free ways that you can mitigate this issue, right? So you can make a pebble tray. So where you simply put a saucer with some rocks or Leica, which are those expanded clay aggregate balls. And what you do is you simply put them all level. You fill it with water, but not over the rocks, under the level of the rocks. You can just settle in your little pot right on top of that and let that just simply evaporate. You just fill it whenever you see. Again, you don't want it to be standing water, so you don't want it to actually be touching. You don't want the water level to actually be in contact with the bottom of the pot, so it's below. Now, you can also group your plants together. This also increases humidity levels. So you can do that to kind of create its own little microclimate. Also, you can just fill up cups of water or a stainless steel. You can buy like at the dollar store. The animal, like the cat or dog food bowls are great. You put a couple rocks in them and you slip them right under your heater. And they readily evaporate. You can also invest in a humidifier. That is also an option. So again, consider your unique situation. Does your home get incredibly cold? Is it drafty during the winter? Do you have a fan available that can help with the air circulation? Do you have heating, and does your home get incredibly dry? Like my voice is getting. Oh my goodness. Whew. All right. So, a couple things that also will come with the season is uninvited guests. So, some specifically are fungi and some pests. So, the season, again, it's stressing your plants out. Um, the stress itself is what causes them, they perceive that stress, they go into dormancy. Some plants that aren't used to that type of temperature drop, especially if they've spent all their life in greenhouses, right? And then all of a sudden they're in your home and it's cold and they're not getting enough light. It's incredibly stressful for the plant. And what plants actually do is they release ultrasonic pulses that actually get heard by other creatures. So specifically pests too. Um, and so what ends up happening is if the plant is stressed, it is sending out these signals, and this can attract pests. So mealybugs are very, very common, especially if you maintain a nice humidity level. Spider mites love that it's dry. They love that it's stagnant, that the air is not moving, that there's not enough air circulation. So they will take over, and you will identify them with all the webbing. Fungus gnats, they tend not to be that prevalent when it's cold, but again, if you're keeping your home incredibly warm, they're still going to be an issue. So the trick is to continue checking your plants. Again, don't forget about them. So continue looking at your leaves, look at the top side, and look at the bottom side. I can't tell you guys that enough. Look at the bottom. This can make or break it, because sometimes they look completely fine on top, but below, a lot of pests actually will start to proliferate below the leaf. So the top side of the leaf is the adaxial, and the bottom side of the leaf is the abaxial. So it's very easy to remember the back of the leaf, abaxial. Always look at the abaxial. And when you're cleaning your leaves, make sure you're getting both sides of the leaf. Don't just clean the top side, clean the bottom as well. Now, if you're adding supplemental lighting, sometimes you end up getting, if you purchase the one that gives off the purple hue, right? Even some full spectrum ones still give off that purple hue. So the thing is, they end up kind of blurring the color contrast. You don't, everything kind of looks perfect, right? It kind of looks uniform. It just looks pink. This is very easily to then overlook potential damage. So any speckling, any pests, you don't see the contrast. So don't just count on just looking at your plants under said grow light and then thinking that they're perfectly fine. Switch to white or yellow light. Use your flashlight on your phone or just a regular flashlight to really take a look at them and inspect them just to make sure. So just to be careful, and to actually mitigate this and just kind of lessen the potential for fungus, because again, fungal spores are everywhere and they're hanging in the air. The air is stagnant. The soil might stay wet for a little bit longer amount of time, right? There's not enough light, so the water is not being used as often, and that's why you're watering less often. Because plants use water, it's part of their photosynthesizing process. But if it's not getting that much light, it's not photosynthesizing enough, therefore it's not using as much water, therefore the water is sitting in the soil for longer periods of time. So that's why you want to water less. Now, this is attractive to molds. And so, especially if you don't have enough air circulation. So even though it is the winter, I do really recommend inexpensive, just get a fan to even if it's just facing your plants on a low setting. You don't want it to be incredibly high, of course, but just a low setting, just to keep them moving, keep the air around them moving. Sometimes open your windows for some cross ventilation, not for too long. You don't want the temperature to drop too much, and you don't want to shock your plant if it's like freezing and snowing outside. Um, but do try to keep that in mind. And so, just a couple important tips to kind of round this off. So again, higher light, they use water much faster. So if you are supplementing light, you might end up having to use to water more often. Even if, let's say, you didn't have very good light to begin with during the summer months, you have northern light, something like that. So you notice your plants, you have to water them maybe every 10 days or so. Now you purchase some supplemental lighting, and your plants seem like every week you have to water them. So remember, higher light conditions, it's going to be they're going to be using the water much faster. Also, higher temperature is going to make them absorb water faster. Longer daylight period, again, related to light. So not just light intensity, but the length of the light that they're getting, they're going to be using more water. Also, tinier plants, what are called plant plugs, tend to lose water much faster. So they usually are these little, got an example here. It's a Buddhist temple. Two little 2-inch pots, they're called plant plugs. And so these also tend to dry out much faster. So you gotta, if you buy these guys when they're this size, you just gotta keep an eye on them. Especially if there's something like little peperomias or little begonias, you're gonna have to water them much more often. That's why they tend to be good terrarium plants. Now, if you have so that combination of glass and bright light that might amplify the light. So if you have your plants like in a cloche, which is like a dome, you might actually realize that they're losing water much faster. Now you might see condensation on the inside of the cloche because it's evaporating, but it can't go anywhere. But sometimes it doesn't end up falling back down, especially if it's the cloche and it's not like a closed terrarium. So you do have to replenish that water supply. Then, so in the spring and the summer, again, active growing season, plants are going to be losing water much faster. Terracotta, so terracotta, the clay, it's made out of clay, and it tends to wick the water away from the soil. So this is great for plants that like a lot of drainage, like a lot of gas exchange. So they're happy, but again, they will lose water much faster. So again, this is good if you have plants that don't like wet feet. So that's usually the term is wet feet for plants that like to remain have their their soil remain moist. Now, plants that are recently repotted, they're still establishing their roots. They're still trying to kind of reset themselves. So they're more focused on that than they are actually photosynthesizing. So it's actually better if you just repotted a plant to actually pull it away slightly from direct light, because it's not actively using that light. It's more focused on trying to establish its roots. So anything that broke off, anything like that. So it's better to not stress it out and potentially burn the plant. So to pull it away, it's also going to be using less water. It's not thinking about photosynthesizing and using water at that time. So just water it slightly less. If you have a plastic or a glazed pot, right? So there's no air exchange. It's more sealed. Again, you want drainage holes, but these are going to retain water for longer periods of time. So you're not going to have to water as often. So if it's in the wintertime, you're going to really have to be careful, because if you keep watering the same amount, you might just the risk of root rot skyrockets in that case. So again, winter, water less often. If it's dormant, water less often, but still water. Don't forget about the plant. All right. So thank you guys so much. I hope that this was informative. Um, and I will be putting up this recording. I'm sorry about the original live broadcast. Our internet just went completely out. And next week's topic will be making terrariums. So super excited. I'm going to be sharing a video with you guys. And so, yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you check out our other classes. And if you ever have any questions, you can email me at jocelyn@urbangarden.eco. And that's urban, HERBAN, garden.eco, ECO. And Jocelyn is JOCELYN. So again, if you need me to elaborate on any of the points in this presentation, feel free to let me know. And you can also reach out if you would like any other replay links or slides to any previous classes. All right, I hope you have a great week and stay safe. Bye, everyone.